Welcome to the latest episode of Overrated with Fran and Babs. It's our first episode with two guests. We've got Martin Zoltz-Ostwick and Sam Pei from the Song by Song podcast. If you don't know what the Song by Song podcast is, they go very deep into the discography of Tom Waits, and this week they're going very deep into the world of New York art rock, with Talking Heads picked as overrated and They Might Be Giants picked as underrated. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some clever people talking about music. Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over-underrated?
Over-underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over-underrated.
Welcome to the latest episode of Over-Underrated with Fran and Babs. How are we today, Fran?
I am dandy. I burnt myself whilst lighting a candle last night, but it has not affected the podcasts. So I'm looking forward to our chat, and I've been listening to a lot of 80s new wave. How are you doing, Babs?
I am good. I have not burnt myself, and I've not been listening to 80s new wave, but I have been listening to the Soulwax album From Dewey, which I think we've talked about before. We've definitely talked about Soulwax before, but From Dewey is an album that was recorded in one take, which I did not realise at the time, and it's seriously impressive because there's a lot of instruments going on, a lot of complicated drums, and I think I was just listening to it today being like, bloody hell, that is an impressive album, impressive feat of recording. Well done, everyone. But we're not alone today, are we, Fran?
We're not alone. We have two guests, guys. Two, can you believe it?
I don't think we can. Two guests from the Song by Song podcast, Sam and Martin. How are you guys?
We're good. It's nice to be here.
There's quite a severe storm going on as we're recording, so I'm slightly worried about it getting lifted up and taken out of Kansas at some point in the middle of the record.
I checked the window.
It's no
Bournemouth seems to be fine at the moment.
Good.
Apparently it's Storm Dudley, which is close to my heart because that's where my sister lives.
Oh, of course.
West Midlands, massive? Yeah.
Yeah, West Midlands represent.
Yeah, we're both down in South London, so we're experiencing the hard front of it. It'll work its way up. Well, I don't know which direction it's heading towards other places, I'm sure. Anyway,
down. Brussels is rainy and miserable, but fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the first weather facts we've ever had on the podcast. I'm
that's all I prepared. That's not the tone. Oh.
That's one for the fact fans out there, as Fran usually says, but I'm taking your line. And in fact, the theme today is quite flimsy and could be another theme. It's New York / art rock, I would say, guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With both bands picked by Sam and Martin. And yeah, we're going to be talking someone who's potentially overrated and someone who's potentially underrated. And we're going to start with the overrated act. So how did you guys pick it? Who picked it? And why are we talking about them today?
Was this my fault?
I think this is mostly your fault. I mean,
I figure if you're going to pick an overrated band, you should pick a band that people really like, right? Like, you can't just be like, Dumpy's Rusty Nuts, like they're really, they get too much press attention.
Come on.
Do they? I don't know the music. But that's the point, I don't know the music. Whereas the Talking Heads, I feel in the scheme of things, saying that you think the Talking Heads is overrated is like a step, like maybe just one step down from saying you think the Beatles are overrated.
Yeah, it's definitely a sacred cow that you've picked today.
Yeah. And I guess I want to start off by saying, I like the Talking Heads. I think they're a good band. I think they did lots of cool stuff, and they've got some cool songs. In fact, we picked some quite cool songs to listen to. But they are overrated. To me, they're not one step down from the Beatles. They are on the same step as our other band that we'll talk about later, and that's why we've chosen them to sort of contrast, I guess.
So, Sam, how much are you blaming Martin today, and how much do you agree with him?
Quite a lot. I mean, my relationship has actually imploded over this particular topic. My girlfriend is getting ready to leave me over the various decisions that I've had to make over the critiques that I've been constructing over why Talking Heads are overrated. She's made the argument in the past that if you put together a playlist of, the most fun songs and the most catchy songs and the most danceable two songs, you end up with a playlist made entirely of Talking Heads. So I've been testing out all of my arguments about, why they are, as you say, they are a heavily rated band. So testing out all the arguments about why that is an over-rating have been going down like an absolute lead balloon in my household. I also like them. I also think they're really interesting, but I've had to approach my engagement with this topic with sort of an academic eye, sort of looking at some of the context around it and some of the ways that the songs make me feel beyond how much I hum along with them and how much I want to shake my booty to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, to avoid further domestic issues, Fran, what do you think about Talking Heads?
So, growing up, they were a band I knew maybe 2 or 3 pop songs, and then during the 90s when I got into 80s music more and got into Duran Duran and Depeche Mode, I kind of thought I should probably get into Talking Heads. And I remember buying a best of, and it didn't do much for me. And then when I was working at Zavvi and they were closing down,
Shout out to Zavvi.
Bingo, tick. Yeah.
I bought the entire box set for £4. So I listened to every album. And after listening to all 7 albums, I worked out I liked more Shed 7 than Talking Heads.
Was it a box set of Shed 7 and Talking Heads combined?
That would be the best
no
thing
wonder
ever.
Zavvi went under, I've got to
This
say.
is the most Fran thing I've ever heard in my bloody life. Zavvi box set, Shed 7, incredible.
So yeah, I think I worked out I like 16 Talking Head songs out of the entire career. Although I've not heard the B-sides, so if they've got amazing B-sides, that's not my fault. I don't know that. But and I'd probably like maybe 18 Shed 7 songs. So
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a very quantitative approach.
Say, have you got
It's
a
a hot
spreadsheet? I want to see that spreadsheet.
as a guy who makes a lot of best of CDs during that era, that's how I can work it out.
Of course.
So the mixtape approach.
Yeah, I had a Shed 7 best of with 18 songs that I liked. So I thought, well, in that case, sadly, they're better than Talking
They are,
Heads.
yeah.
Wow, amazing.
It's tough to
Shock.
argue with.
Babs, I assume you agree with me.
I mean, I haven't quantified how I felt about them, I must say. But yeah, I'm really happy that they were picked as a band, because I think we talked about picking them as a band quite early on when we were discussing themes. Because for me, yeah, they're one of those bands where there are songs of theirs that are often on the radio, and you've picked a few of those. And every time I've been like, how is this very arty band so popular when they're so weird? David Byrne has been in pop culture forever, and I'm holding my hands up. I had all the intentions of watching Stop Making Sense and American Utopia, and I didn't. So I'm hoping you're gonna bring that knowledge. And I own Remain in Light. I think similarly, I saw it for £3 in a record shop, and I quite like it. But they're one of those bands where I've not really had the inclination to go further, or something has stopped me, either because it's art rock and it's a bit complicated and you have to be in the mood for it. And I thought they had way more albums that they did. I didn't realize their existence was so short. I think because of how much they permeate pop culture, how much their songs have been on the radio, I feel like for as long as I've been listening to the radio. So I'm really excited to get into this because I knew 3 of the songs from your playlist. I didn't know the other 2, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to think at the end of it. So
I like how so much of this is to do with the price of the albums. Underpriced is, I think, an alternate title.
That's the Patreon one when we get it
sure,
started.
Sure, of course. Bonus content.
I just jumped to Apple Music, so I got a free trial. So listening to those Talking Heads albums I didn't enjoy very much was free for me.
Great.
So bargain.
Does that make them better or worse, though? I don't understand how we're working.
Well, it's
this.
infinite value, right?
Sure, okay. For nothing, I get a lot.
Unlimited streaming. Okay, so Martin, did you come up with the playlist, or did you work together on it?
We worked together on it, and actually, I wanted to include. So here's the thing I think about Talking Heads, right? And this is. And this comes with a few caveats. I think they've got some brilliant singles, and some of those brilliant singles are on this playlist. And I think their albums are largely pretty boring. And saying a band has some good songs and lots of boring songs is a bit unfair, because most bands have a lot of boring songs and don't even have any good songs. So, but it does mean that in this format, we're kind of hearing some of their best music. We did deliberately pick a song that we thought is quite well known and quite boring, but overall, like, we've picked some pretty decent stuff, and we kind of came to it together between like songs we knew and songs that people knew, and then the odd fan favorite from me.
Because I guess the thing with Talking Heads, why so many people talk about them being good and influential is the influences that they have from world music, in inverted commas, Parliament, Funkadelic and Fela Kuti. And I guess, were there many bands doing that at that time? I look to you, Fran, because I'm sure you've watched a documentary about it and can inform me. But
I think they're one of the first. I think Pill, Public Image Limited, were using African beats. But then I guess Paul Simon kind of championed it afterwards.
So I think I can. That is an argument that I can definitely get on board with. Like the way they were making music was a bit different to a lot of other people. And I've got comments for one of the songs where I'm like, this feels like it influenced hip hop, really. Like, I'm looking forward to getting into it and seeing if anyone changes their mind.
The thing about making a playlist of overrated songs, though, I feel, is that you really have to, if you're going to be honest about it, I feel like I wanted to go, what are the most successful, the most well-known, sort of the best music, because otherwise you're, like you say, Martin, it's easy to find dross in any band, in any human being's output, to grab hold of the worst moments of a person's creative endeavours doesn't really relate to their impact on culture, and that's what we're talking about, right? Their rating / financial cost for a box set.
I mean, that's why we like to leave it up to the people, because as we keep mentioning, our Bon Jovi episode was 10 of the worst Bon Jovi songs, and I tell you something, guys, like it really made me see the band in a whole new, because I didn't really like their popular songs anyway, and they were all songs from the 21st century, and I'm scarred for life. So, you can't.
That sounds like a name of a Bon Jovi song from the 21st century.
Scarred for life.
And you're to blame.
Yeah, that's why we now have 5 songs, because we couldn't handle having 10 terrible songs in a row.
Yeah.
Very wise.
I just couldn't bring myself to, like, I think there's a lot, apart from what Sam says, it's not entirely fair. Like, there's a lot of Talking Head songs that put me to sleep, and I was like, I don't want to make you listen to that and then say intelligent things about them. That doesn't seem very
that would have been
gracious.
Fine. We take it again. I don't think anything's going to scar us as much as that Bon Jovi episode. So don't. But if you come on again, don't worry, we can take it.
Overrated.
So we dive into the playlist.
Let's do it. So what's your first pick?
The first one we've got is Psycho Killer, which I feel like is, it's off their first album, 77. I think it comes relatively late in the album. They don't put this, in fact, I think it's the penultimate song on this first album. So they're not putting the big hits up.
They may not have known what their big hits were.
No, well, I think so. And there's lots of stuff talking about how Psycho Killer was written significantly earlier, like around around 73, 74, and was performed before Talking Heads formed under the Artistics, the former band that Chris Frantz and David Byrne had. But when it came out in 77, it coincided with the Son of Sam killings in New York, and so I think it got a lot of airplay and a lot of attention because it sounded like this new band Talking Heads is talking about these horrific events, occurring in their own backyard.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that side of things. I mean, it's just I think it's like the thing that makes this track for me is like Tina Weymouth's bass line.
Yes.
Like obviously, like I think this will come up all the way through. In fact, all of their songs, but all the ones we'll talk about is like she is a great bass player.
Yes.
And then the second thing, his voice. Like he has this incredibly idiosyncratic way of performing. He's not. I would argue he's not like a scare quotes good singer, but he has so much character and performance and like emotion and expression in what he's doing. It's just when he starts yelping in the middle, you're just like, what's happening? This is frightening. Is he going to kill me? I love that about it.
Again, I quite like when people pick famous songs for analysis, because it's like I'd never really analysed this, and I'd totally forgotten how good Tina Weymouth was at bass, because when you think about this song, you think exactly about the yelping and the fa-fa-fa, and that's it. I also hadn't really paid attention to the fact that what's quite menacing is that when he does the fa-fa-fa bits, it is just him and the bass. It's like all the instruments are suspended, and it really kind of, it's very tense and intimate, isn't it? Then there's that wonderful middle eight where he starts singing in French, which seemed to be like a real, like,
like early, like late 70s, early 80s thing, because like Blondie does that on one of her tracks, doesn't she? Is it in Denis Denis?
Yeah.
That she does that? It's just like, must be a thing that they just were like, yeah, throw in a bit of French.
French,
yeah,
romantic, cool, all good.
Yeah.
Tina Weymouth only learnt the bass like a year before.
Yeah, she was.
So she got good quick.
She was recruited because they couldn't find a bass player that they wanted to work with, or possibly that wanted to work with them.
Transportation or something, and then they were like, oh, you know, I read that. Yeah, they like just listen to some Susie Quattro, and then you learn how to play it. And yeah, clearly Susie Quattro, a great teacher for Tina.
Really strong.
Well, it's not a complicated bass line, I wouldn't say. It's pretty straightforward, but she's just got such a fat groove. Like, it's such a good groove. Like, it's all about the groove. In fact, like, Talking Heads are arguably mostly all about the groove, but this track especially.
And the production does give her space as well to, like, do something that is, like, really roots this song and lots of other songs. Like, there's lots of stuff happening in various songs that we're going to talk about, but you can always hear that bass. That bass is always given the space to really drive home that, like you say, the groove and the danceability, the sort of the shoulder shake or the hip shake, which I think is the strongest part. What I disagree with you, Martin, and I think this is the beginning of my overrated argument, is that the French section in the middle and the kind of the nihilism that is clearly like front and center in this song and going onwards, I think kind of threads through a kind of like toxic intellectualism and superiority, which I think really undermines, like, they're fun, upbeat, danceable songs, but they have an air of hopelessness
Snootiness.
And disdain in them. Exactly.
Interesting.
And
they're cold, right? There's not a lot of warmth to maybe some of the later ones, but for that early period, there's not much warmth.
No.
In those songs.
And Byrne said, because he'd written it a couple of years before release, when I started writing this, he says he got help later, and we'll talk about that help. He says, I imagined Alice Cooper doing a Randy Newman type ballad. Both the Joker and Hannibal Lecter were much more fascinating than the good guys. Everyone sort of roots for the bad guys in the movie. And I go, you're the Jared Leto of 70s music. And I sort of go, that's kind of an unpleasant starting point, which I feel, I mean, Byrne is an odd character, and I don't think that's a condemnation of him, but I do feel that cynicism and you know, I mean, I can't speak French, so, you know, I have an inferiority complex about it, but I think that there's something slightly superior about it which I dislike.
I wonder how they went with the Ramones crowd, because they supported the Ramones.
They died a death, apparently. It did not go well. Their first gig in 75 was opening for the Ramones, and they were not appreciated.
Like, playing an acoustic guitar singing about, you know, Psychic Kid in French is not going to work with 1, 2, 3, 4 audiences at all, really.
Apparently Joe Ramone particularly really disliked them. But
yeah, I think on David Byrne, there is a quote which said that, you know, the reason why they haven't really reunited. So Byrne says that it was because of bad blood, whereas Tina Weymouth said that David Byrne was a man incapable of returning friendship. And it's like, that's pretty harsh.
I mean, he seems like a bit of a dick. I was reading that when she did the Tom Tom Club album, the first Tom Tom Club album, which I think is great, and arguably as a complete piece of work better than any single Talking Heads album that I've heard, which is admittedly not all of them because I got bored.
No caveats, Martin. Push on forward.
He was really snooty about it. He was like, "Oh, they're going in a pop direction." Like, if you listen to the Tom Tom Club album, it's great. Like it has the groove and it's fun and it's weird and it's all the things Talking Heads are. But it sounds like, I mean, I think the thing that Sam's like another way of thinking about the thing that Sam's talking about is just like, they do sometimes have a sense of humour, but it never feels like they're laughing with the audience. No, like they might be laughing at the audience or, you know, beside the audience, but it's like you're not in it together, and that's okay, but it is a little alienating, I think.
The Tom Tom Club was sampled by loads of hip hop.
Yeah, Mariah Carey. Fantasy by Mariah Carey. Yeah, that's sampling Genius of Love, which is an absolute banger of a track. Again, like Tina Weymouth's groove, fat.
But yeah, Fran, do you agree with kind of the elitism kind of thing? Because I'm kind of on the fence. I'm like, you know, they are art school students and they wear it on their sleeves, but I don't particularly feel alienated. I think there's worse, but maybe it's because, you know, as Martin keeps saying, the groove and the pop, the melody shines through so much that I'm like, sing in French, sing in Japanese, I don't care. But yeah, Fran, do you agree?
Yeah, it doesn't really bother me. I mean, I always found it an interesting track. I've no idea what the far, far, far came from, but it works as a
it's
great hook.
It's an Otis Redding reference. It's from a song called Fa 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 Fa, Sad Song.
Right. Okay.
Cool.
Still from the best.
I assumed it was a sort of like I thought it was quite good character work in the sense he's saying far, far better run away. And it's like the character's stuttering. He's a socially awkward character, and he was like working that into. But I mean, maybe that's too much of a stretch. But I broadly agree with Sam's point. With this song, I think it's meant to be alienating and slightly menacing and disturbing. So it does for this track. It actually works for me. But I think broadly speaking, you're right.
But to move on to the next track, I found that a little bit more interesting. So what's your next choice, guys?
Oh, this is pulled up. So this is my choice. So this is weirdly, I don't think this is one of their more famous songs, although it was, I think, a single. And it's the track after Psycho Killer on the album. It's the last track on the album. And I think it's great. It also very, very clearly, to me, wears its influences on its sleeve in a way that some of the other tracks don't. And that it sounds like a sort of like Afrobeat tune with a sort of like explicitly devotional or Christian element, which is quite weird. It's quite a weird thing to do, but it just has so much energy and it feels like a real song to me. Like some of their tracks, they don't quite gel for me as songs, whereas this one does. It's a real banger. What did you think of it?
I think it started to sound like Television, the opening section.
Right, yeah, that's a good note.
But who I guess they would have been playing around the same time in New York. So I don't know if that's there's a lot of yelping from Byrne. But that nervous guitar playing, I think, has been copied to death by noughties British indie bands. That style was like Franz Ferdinand.
I've got Franz Ferdinand notes coming up.
Yeah. You can see where they completely stole that from. But I completely forgot about this track. Babs, do you remember this song?
I'd never heard this song, and I was surprised that it sounded so 70s, right? Like, I guess I knew that what, Talking Heads were late 70s, early 80s. But because, there's pretty much only guitars here. Okay, there's like a surf guitar going on. I was like, I actually wouldn't have guessed that it was Talking Heads, apart from David going, nyang, 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 which is very, very amusing.
That's his USP.
You can definitely make Fran, you can make a spreadsheet of David Byrne's noises on these tracks.
17 of them.
That would be a great supercut, wouldn't it? Just David going, hey.
But it was a little bit more melodic, so not so much for me. One of the two songs that I didn't know on this playlist.
Well, I like the fact there's some melody. I mean, I feel like it's an essential component of music that Talking Heads like to avoid.
But I think it wrong-footed me, and I think I prefer yelpy, jarring Talking Heads to melodic Talking Heads.
I think it's got both. But I'm not supposed to be defending them. No, it's terrible. You're right. It's a terrible song.
No, defend away. But Sam, what did you think?
It is bouncy. I think that melodic stuff, I'm mostly more on Martin's side, that I find the association a positive one in that direction. And the Television comparison is relevant. I think that they share some stuff with Television, with Richard Hell in general, where you put them next to the rest of punk and you go, oh, this is a notch more interesting, it's a notch smarter, it's a notch more engaged with the music than, the vast majority of punk is. And obviously they had a big success as soon as they got reclassified from punk as new wave. Suddenly everyone could talk about them and they couldn't get written off as the dirty, smelly punks. The difficulty that I have with this, again, it feels fairly negative. I think, it's either about privilege, parents being the support they give being the only thing that pull someone up to success, or possibly cocaine as well, like something that it gives you the high and the energy and the success that you can then move on and achieve things when you're down in the dumps.
I thought it was about Jesus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, he does that in other songs. Like, I mean, we'll talk about like Once in a Lifetime. Like, he's deliberately using a preacher mode of address. I think we talk a lot about Tom Waits, like taking Christian tropes and singing about like fire and brimstone. I think I took it as him listening to songs where people are like, I found Jesus and things were really good, and like made that into his own version of that. I didn't think.
Why did you sing it like that then?
I think it's about that sort of like privilege. It's a self-referential thing where you're going, oh, we are, like you said, that we're art school geeks. We wear that on our sleeves, and we've sort of been pulled up and given the opportunities. Whenever we slip, you pull me up, and I can do all these things. Okay. And again, tying it in with some of the biographical stuff, where his accusations towards Weymouth and Franz being more commercial and coming from privilege and being more concerned with the money. I go, is this again something towards the people around him rather than necessarily with the people around him, with the people he's singing about? It feels. My thesis, guys, is that he's a bit snooty. I'm I'm going to go with this thesis.
Because I actually did try to find more information about this song, and I couldn't find much on what the motivation was, and it just says, pretty simple narrative about a man going through the ups and downs of life with some help from an unknown source. And I'm like, yeah, thanks, genius.
And there were one set of footprints in the sand.
But maybe the next one.
And it was David Byrne.
Is a bit easier to interpret. So what's your third pick?
The third one was one that I was really keen to get in, Heaven. From a later album. We started off in 77 and now we're in 79 from Fear of Music. Heaven takes a much lower energy, this sort of like almost purgatorial sense and image of heaven. Well, it's describing a whole load of positive things, but with that lack of drive, with that sort of like wandering and meandering, and his voice lacks most of the yelps. It's a slightly narcotic tone that he has.
Yes.
Exactly.
3 stars, no yelps.
No yelps. Does Yelp still star ratings? I'm not sure. But
maybe not of David Byrne.
But this is also the place where Brian Eno starts to have an influence. It's co-written with Jerry Harrison, who was sort of like the fourth member of the band. But at this stage, Eno is coming in as a producer and also starting to have more of a like creative input, not just on the writing and the structure of songs. And it's describing all the positives in the least positive way possible. I think it's a bit negative. I think it's a bit sneery. Have I mentioned my opinion on Talking Heads? Have I got it clear?
Well, I think that's an okay. I think going like, you think it would be great to just do all the things you want for eternity. That would get boring. I think that's quite a good concept. And like I mean, I don't want to spoiler any recent TV shows, but there is something which recently has explored that concept. But just if you read the lyrics,
talking about Breaking Bad. I haven't watched Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that's
yet.
right. It's all purgatory. He says, heaven is a place where nothing ever happens, and he's managed to completely convey that in the music, where nothing ever happens and it's really boring. And I mean, in some ways, that's an achievement. I'd like to think that he could have made a song that was fun to listen to that still conveyed that, but it's a dull song. And this is the song where I think we both agree this is a bit boring and insipid and
thank God.
But it is one of their most famous songs. Yeah. It's one of their most liked songs. And there's a few like that, like Life During Wartime is another example. I'm just people think this is one of their best songs. Really?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people cover this song as well.
Really?
A lot of bands love it, yeah.
Also, it's a year after Sparks' number one song in Heaven, which is a fucking banger and much better. Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a banger. Okay. Which is a banger and like much better than this tune.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you think it's boring as well, but yeah, go ahead, Fran. Yeah.
Have you heard the live version on Stop Making Sense? Because it is far superior than this. It's just Weymouth, Byrne on stage with two backing singers, and it works. I mean, it sounds like it's recorded in the garage. It's got a weird sound to it, and I always kind of thought he's like the American Bowie at this point. I can imagine Bowie singing this, and maybe that's the Brian Eno help. But like, yeah, I never got this. Like, I don't get 5 years by David Bowie. Everyone goes on about that being a classic, and everyone covers it, and I find that dull. And Heaven is up there as like a track everyone goes on about. So yeah, well, you got to love Heaven, but I mean, nothing really happens past the first minute. That's basically
I think it's the lyrics. I honestly think it's the lyrics, because they're, again, as much as classically Fran or I don't really pay much attention. I did. I was like, this is very meaningful, and the lyrics paint a picture that the music does and it doesn't, because I'm bored to shit of the music. I really thought it was, and I didn't realize Brian Eno had started here. I wrote, this is like bad David Bowie. So yeah, again, tick. And I did not like the piano combined with the guitars at all, but the lyrics are beautiful. As Martin sang before, it's they're really.
No,
nice.
I think the lyrics are terrible.
Oh really? Oh.
Yeah, I think they're really boring. I think it's just sort of like I was looking through some songs. This is a different song, but I read this. I found this Talking Head song. I can't remember if it was on the same record called "Cities," and the lyrics are: "Think of London, a small city. It's dark in the daytime. People sleep in the daytime if they want to. I'm checking them out. I've got it figured out. There's good points and bad points. Find a city. Find myself a city to live in." And you just like. I'm all for like songs which are like quick to write, but like, come on, guys,
But see,
like do a second pass.
I think for me it paints a picture of kind of okay, it's talking about heaven, but like I don't know, purgatory. Is it themes of atheism as well? Which in the US in the 70s that would have been, okay, yeah. When was imagined by John Lennon? That.
It's still controversial, sure.
Yeah. So and doing it, putting it in a bar as well, putting something, an idea of God in something so sinful as a bar.
But when Joan Osborne did that, no one told her she was like the future of alternative music when she did One of Us. Oh, Jesus.
The thing that I think is disappointing is that I think it has a very narrow view of heaven, of happiness, of achievement. That he's grabbed onto the idea that if you're in a place where everything is good, then that goodness will become boring, and that's only relates to a very surface view of what provides joy and happiness and satisfaction to a person. If it's all the best song, then of course it will be unpleasant. But we don't just get satisfaction from listening to good things. We get satisfaction from listening to bad things or confusing things or things we have to interrogate and then engaging with them. And that's what, you would imagine what someone who's really thought about what heaven and happiness is would have their opinion of. Not like, if you have an orgasm every 30 seconds, they're no longer significant. It feels trying to be smart without actually really being smart about what heaven, happiness, fulfillment is. And again, dismissive. It's a great opportunity for him to go, whether it's religion, whether it's consumerism, whether it's other music, whether it's even music that he presented and has had hits from in the past. It's a way of him going, you guys are all idiots. Let me like wipe away that stuff.
I got a certain amount of sympathy for like him being a young man who's like, I want to be like Dali, not David Bowie, and just being a bit pretentious. Like I get that. I mean, I suppose the proof in the pudding is whether he's still doing that when he's 40 as opposed to when he's 20.
Have any of you seen American Utopia?
I saw it over lockdown, and I think that David Byrne is brilliant on stage. And if I ever have to hear any Talking Heads, I want to see it live in front of
Stop
David
Making
Byrne.
Sense is awesome as well, like clearly.
Yeah, and that's a great concept as well. I mean, there's some, like, I don't think at any point I'm arguing that they don't have interesting ideas and they aren't, that's the thing with experimental music, like sometimes it fails.
Yeah, sure.
I think in the case of Talking Heads, they fail a lot. And that's fine, but their failure shouldn't be lauded as successes. That's what I'm saying.
But yeah, I think Talking Heads for me is very visual music, and I'm not a particularly visual person because of, again, as I mentioned before, his permeation in popular culture. And I haven't seen American Utopia, but I know how it looks because just from the few clips, like it's set up and you. I mean, he's a great marketeer. I don't know how he'd feel about that, but yeah.
And he also works with great people, like Jonathan Demme. I mean, I think American Utopia is Spike Lee, isn't it? So. Yeah, he knows who to work with. But speaking of religious ideas, we move on to the next track.
Once in a Lifetime, which is another Talking Heads track I really like. And talking of visual stuff, like the visuals are, I think the video for this is wonderful. Like this
is the one where Kermit the Frog is dancing. You really like you're a big Muppet fan, yeah?
There is a Once in a Lifetime Muppets version there. No, he's got this, I mean, you must have seen this video, right? Like there's a lot of back projection. It's like very 80s, but he's doing this very odd dance, very angular, very physical dance. It's choreographed, and he sort of seemed to have designed it himself with Tony Bazil helping to do the choreography. And I think it looks amazing. And just that tension and awkwardness in the physical performance really matches the themes of this song, which I think is I think it's one of the best songs about existentialism ever written, which is just like you might just turn around one day and be like, what is my life? And I think it does a really good job of capturing that. And the lyric, like when he sings like time isn't holding us, time isn't after us, I just think that's such a beautiful, that's a really heartfelt sentiment to me. Like this sort of paranoia of like the rat race of like, what am I going to do before I die? What does it mean? And just like, that's a sort of answer to that question. And one of the first sort of warm sentiments in the Talking Heads song. So I really like this track. Sam, what did you make of it?
That segment of the lyrics, I absolutely agree. It's iconic. That that sense of like sudden arrival and dislocation and realization are really potent. I feel less for the water metaphor, which I feel is
which made me laugh. I thought we're back talking about water again, guys.
Oh yeah,
as we did on your podcast.
It's a good. I mean, it's very, very, very. It's a significant. It's one of the 4 basic elements. It's understandable that we come back to it, but I feel the free association in this, both in the music video and in some of the lyrical structures. And I want more structure. I appreciate the structure of that. You may find yourself, and that works for me.
And that's from that's like what was inspired by kind of listening to radio preachers. Apparently, like almost like call and response structure, and I do think that as a rhythm, as a sort of verbal rhythm, is really compelling.
But this is the song that a lot of deal is made of the polyrhythms, the influence of the quote world music that you mentioned earlier on. And while I hear them, while I can pick them apart, I can see that they're there. I don't get much from it. Maybe there's more elsewhere in the album that I haven't managed to find, but it feels like density and overlap and a wash of rhythmic structures rather than something that, like a bubbling of rhythms rather than something where I can pick them apart and go, oh, isn't it interesting how they're colliding? They're just doing it. And alongside what feels like very improvisational, both in the music video and in some of the lyrical stuff, it doesn't have enough structure for me to think it's genuinely engaging with stuff. Like, speaking about the Kermit thing, I feel like Kermit singing about This Is Not My Beautiful Life a few years after the passing of Jim Henson takes on a slightly greater significance, where I go, oh, this poor guy going like, oh, where am I? This is not my beautiful creator. This is not the voice that I had. Who am I? What's my purpose in life?
When I got my box set, this was the first album I checked out because of a song. I thought, okay, this is the most famous track by Talking Heads. Surely Remain in Light will sound like this track, and it doesn't at all. This stands out completely from all the other tracks. The other tracks are far more rhythmic. There's no like bubbling synths or like pop sensibilities. So I remember like MTV in the early 90s would have MTV History, I think, and in the trailer to it, they have like little snippets of like big hits from the 80s, and it always showed like David Byrne doing his dance to like for 5 seconds, and I thought that looks amazing, and it never appeared on the show. And when it actually first appeared, I was like blown away, like what on earth is this? This is brilliant. And I then thought, oh wow, Talking Heads are giving me my favourite band, and that's why I then bought the best of, and then found out they were not my favourite band. But I think to this day, like when this comes on, I instantly, my hairs and back of my neck stand up. I think it's one of those songs that only Talking Heads could have created, and no band's ever gotten close to it. And I think I'm glad Talking Heads exists just because of this one song. I think it's brilliant.
That's fair.
And
I think it's amazing. Even though it blows my mind how popular it is, because I'm just like, disaffected.
But it was the 80s. There was X-ray specs in the charts.
What's going
everything
on?
was weird.
This guy anxiously speaks singing over this like arpeggio siren about this is not my beautiful life. It shouldn't work. It absolutely does. And again, like, looking at this analytically in a way I've never done before, I really like the contrast of how anxious he is in the verse, but then in the chorus it's a lot more detached and there's a lot more voices, and it's almost like they're supporting him, and the music sounds like the waves that are supporting him. I'd never made that connection before. And this is where I made is this what influenced modern hip hop? Because the Remove the Water, where it goes remove the water, I was like, was this the first popular song where this happened? Because this is 1980. You know, was it not? Let us know, guys. But it really surprised me how I hadn't made that connection. Also, talking about this in 1980 when Reagan has just come to power, like, I think this would have been like a song reflecting the times if it was done in the mid to late 80s. This is done before all of that happens, and he's already having that anxiety and seeing that. So yeah, it's genius. Absolutely.
But I don't think it's a political anxiety. I think it's like an existential anxiety. It's it's almost like a midlife crisis. Although he's a young man, it's a midlife crisis anxiety. And actually, that's the thing that's so compelling about his performance in this. But generally, like it's like that's what I think what works so well with him as a vocalist is that you feel like he's telling you something really important. Obviously, if you then realise that he's not, or feel like he's not, that's incredibly frustrating. Like on this song, I think he is. And on other songs, I'm just like, what are you talking about whether you want to live in London because it's raining?
There's a quote from him. He says, maybe I'm fascinated with the middle class because it just seems so different from my life, so distant from what I do, I can't imagine living like that. So that's pretty clear cut.
Those squares.
The image of echoing the preacher gestures, though, I mean, pulling it back to our topic of expertise, I don't know, Martin, is that, Tom Waits has done this kind of thing. And I feel like I feel like Tom Waits, when he does Way Down in the Hole, particularly on Big Time, where he becomes that preacher, where he includes all of those gestures, where he includes that rhythmic cadence, he is doing it as well as commenting on it. And I feel like Byrne is limited because he can only mock it and ape it and dismiss it. He's not able to revel in it and reproduce it. He can only deconstruct it and damage it, or he only seems interested in doing that. And I feel that's again, I really like this song, and I think those elements are really interesting and engaging, but I feel it's lessened because I see it done with more love, with more heart, with more enthusiasm and genuine sentiment in other places.
So you think that the fact that he's a bit maybe more of a detached observer doesn't make you love the songs as much?
Just dismissing things is less hard than doing things and also commenting on them.
I'm not exactly sure whether that's his intention. I would say it might be that he just really likes there's that great thing in early Pixies records where like Frank Black is like screaming, "Come on, Pilgrim," because he heard that on a religious record. And I just think, like with Tom Waits, like with David Byrne, maybe they just like the forms they're
just magpieing it, yeah.
But David Byrne's thing is like to be anti-rock, right? He's like, anything that rock musicians do, I'm not going to do. So seeming sincere is one of those things.
Yeah, sure. Okay,
and so he has this distance. Again, like you can dislike that style of performance. I think that's entirely legit, but I don't think it necessarily means there's malign intent. It's just the way that he's he's processing and performing these things.
That's fair.
But
he also seems to have taken the limelight. This would have been early MTV, and so this song became Talking Heads is that guy David Byrne. None of the rest of the band are in the video, and then from here he then brought out solo albums, and he almost quit the band. So it does seem like his ego had taken over by this time, and it was named the David Byrne Show. It's kind of I'm not a fan of music videos where it just has the lead singer. For me, it has to be the band.
Oh really? I didn't know. How many episodes have we recorded? And I didn't know this. Why?
Well, because it's a group mentality. I think.
What about No Surprises? That's a great music video with just the lead singer. Unless maybe there's reflections of the band in the helmet.
Radiohead are different because I think Radiohead are kind of a shy act. I think with Talking Heads, they all had reading about them during this research. I think there's egos in the band. I don't think there's as many egos in Radiohead. I think none of them really want to be in the music video in Radiohead.
No, maybe not.
Radiohead took their name from a Talking Heads song, didn't they?
They did. True. Yeah.
And I mean, similar themes, I guess, on the last pick of the playlist. So, what is it?
Yeah, we've got Road to Nowhere right the way from Little Creatures in 1985, which is, not quite the end of their career, but definitely, 88 is their last album together, which opens, Road to Nowhere opens in a very different way with this sort of like chorus of unaccompanied voices, and is again a bleak view of the world. Oh gosh, what a surprise. I've really found a theme. That's not, but this one is more...
it's David Byrne's song again. Great.
Oh, great. This one feels like it, by this stage, has dropped some of the mannerisms of Byrne's performance and sounds more like a straightforward, not a straightforward pop or rock song, but a straightforward song structure, which doesn't feel like it's pushing against the framework of what a song can be. He sounds more comfortable in singing range. He wanted to write a song that presented a resigned or even joyful look at doom, our deaths, and the apocalypse. And I think
succeeded.
I think he did succeed. I mean,
yeah, and there's some yelps on it.
And
so
that's a
4
new
stars.
One for the spreadsheet, Fran. So
yeah, I tend to agree, and I think the reason I like this song is because it's not like most Talking Head songs. It sounds like a real song. Sam is actually being, I think, quite generous in saying the Talking Heads were pushing against established song structure. I think a lot of the time they just didn't use song structure, and so a lot of their songs aren't very satisfying because they're just like a vamp for like 6 minutes. And this isn't. This has a verse and a chorus and an intro and an outro. So yeah, it's a great tune, but it's not really much like a Talking Head song apart from the helping.
It's interesting that you say that because I think, Sam, you read out the first half of a quote that I saw. The second half is that the beginning, which is, quite beautiful. David Byrne said, "We tacked it on because I didn't think the rest of the song was enough. I mean, it was only 2 chords. So out of embarrassment or shame, I wrote an intro section that had a couple more in it." Now, is that faux modesty or not? But that's quite interesting given what you're saying.
It's not. Well, the verse is 2 chords, but it has other variations. I mean, I don't know. I think there's a certain trend of musicians to be snippy about their past work as if they're better than it. So I don't know. I think the a cappella intro and the outro are really, really good. I really like the way it centers the voice, the voices. So yeah, up yours, David Byrne. I think it sounds good.
That's the summary of our criticism of Talking Heads?
Just a big middle finger, cast in the vague direction of New York City. Yeah.
Fran?
Yeah, it's kind of strange how they kind of went back a step after experimenting with Byrne Eno. This was the most mainstream period, and this is just a pure radio-friendly pop song, really. Although it's got an accordion on it, more of that to come later on in our podcast.
The best instrument for New York underground rock.
There we go. Sorry, spoilers.
But it's kind of a weird. It always feels like it's a lot longer than it is. To me, it seems like it goes on for 6 minutes. It outstays the welcome, unfortunately for me. It's one of those songs that you enjoy singing along to the chorus for half a minute, and then you turn over. It's perfectly adequate, but it's not one of the best songs for me. It's just it's a song that my mum will know of Talking Heads. Deal with that as you wish.
Part of the point though about this and Heaven, that the content is mirrored by the form, where it's a bit interminable. We're on a road to nowhere. Oh God, it's boring, this road, isn't it? This song is also boring.
I don't find this song boring, and I think it would be a shame if you were if they do something that's more melodic or more accessible, that's necessarily a step backwards. I think that's a bit of a trap, because it's fine for them to experiment and then do some accessible stuff, and that, I think that's totally okay.
Do you know what, Fran, though? I think I almost had your opinion before I sat down to listen to this song, because I associate this song purely with the radio, and that beginning, it goes on for quite a bit. You think, okay, they finished, it's going to launch. Nope, there's another little round of, we know. But I think this time when listening to it, when it goes into the song, and when the drums come along and they're driving, and actually listening to him going, "We're on a road to nowhere," and it kind of, this uncertain, it's on a bumpy road. Again, it made me see the song more visually, made me appreciate it a bit more, maybe because I don't listen to the radio so much anymore, so I haven't been bombarded with it. It's probably been quite a few years since I listened to it, and I felt something with the song that I don't think I'd ever really felt before, because I was listening to it in a different context. And I think, we talk a lot, sometimes about music videos and visuals making things better or worse. I really appreciated listening to this song, in my house on my computer, not, for the nth time on, what is it, Heart or Capital. I don't live in the UK anymore. I have no idea what the references are, but yeah.
Magic.
So I kind of changed my mind on this song this time. So to conclude, what do people feel? Are Talking Heads overrated? Martin, it was your idea. How do you feel at the end of this?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get where Sam's coming from. I'm not completely persuaded, and I also feel like if someone's position is they hate people, that's an okay artistic statement. That's fine if the music is interesting.
Fine, yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. I think. Are they overrated? It's just if you're saying something's overrated, does that mean people shouldn't like them, Leno?
Basically, it means, do they deserve the fame that they get?
I mean, I don't want David Byrne to starve, and I want him to be able to carry on doing work. But no, not really. No, not really. I think the Ramones are a more fun band. If we're talking about even people from the same era, or Blondie, and I think they are pretty highly rated too. So I didn't. Are they better? Are they a worse band than those bands? I don't know. They're more diverse, but
as overrated for another episode. So
right, okay. Well, I guess we'll find out then. So the jury's out until we find out about the Ramones. Basically, that's where I'm at.
What about you, Sam?
I stand by them being overrated. I think it's less about the things that they do and more the things that are missing from what they do. Martin's absolutely right. Like, Myth and Sorrow should be allowed to write music as well. I'll allow that. And I like lots of like downbeat and relentlessly, pessimistic music as well. But I think that it exposes a weakness that the groups that we say are like iconic and amazing and truly accurate, that should be placed on a pedestal, need to have more of a sense of humanity and togetherness. The clip that I saw from American Utopia was Byrne saying that if we eliminate everything from the stage except the stuff we care about the most, there would just be us and you. And I feel like that sounds like an argument for togetherness and connection, but I think it comes across as quite brutalist and quite minimalist, modernist, and I like all of the fluff and the ephemera and the more organic, unrefined, undeployed, and more warm and loving elements. So I think that for a band to be underrated or accurately rated, there needs to be love, and I don't think there's enough love in this.
Well, David Byrne doesn't want anyone's friendship, so that's going to be an issue, Sam. Good luck with that. Fran?
Well, I guess we had to separate Byrne's career to Talking Heads. But yes, I went into this thinking, yes, they're overrated. But after watching Stop Making Sense this morning and giving them a refresh, I'm thinking so they've influenced loads of bands. That's a bonus. They experimented. They're amazing live. They haven't sold as many records as I thought. They've only sold 10 million 10 million albums, which is a lot. But when you're talking about bands next to them, like the Duran Durans and the U2s, that they've never had a massive selling album. So I suppose I assume they had sold a lot more. So for that reason alone, and I have DJ'd and played once in a lifetime, and the reaction on the dance floor when they hear that synth sound is quite organic. You don't get that with many bands, so I will say that they're not overrated.
I'm gonna sit on the fence for this one because I came in thinking I don't know much of Talking Heads and I want to, and the tracks that you picked that I knew I liked, and the tracks that you picked that I didn't know I didn't like. Right, so on the one hand, I'm like, okay, well, if these are meant to be other good ones or other famous ones, then absolutely they're overrated. But I think, there's too much more to explore. And I think I was really surprised at how visually I experienced the songs that I was listening to. So I think I need to go back and maybe watch the music videos, reflect a bit more, like a lady of leisure, before saying overrated. But I think I came in thinking they're probably overrated, but now it's dimmed. So yeah.
But I would reiterate that I do think this format favours them. Like, I think if you could pick 5 songs, you could pick 10 songs, you could pick even 16 Talking Head songs that are pretty good or even great. But I found it really difficult listening. I was like, I'm going to listen to full albums, so at least I have a little bit more of a back knowledge, because I haven't listened to a load of Talking Heads albums, and I found it such a slog. I found it a really boring experience, apart from the odd song that would pop up and I'd be like, oh well, this isn't the obvious single, and it probably was the single, But I think if you delve deeper, you will be disappointed.
Hey, podcast lovers. Now available, a new podcast experience featuring exclusive miniseries like Food Faves, and all new series that takes a fun look at everyone's real first true love, food. Milky Way Marvels, a lighthearted astronomy series where we explore the fascinating wonders of our galaxy. Pop culture icons, an entertaining, nostalgic look back at various nouns in popular culture. Plus more. Relax, enjoy, listen, laugh, and maybe even learn. Podcast, presented by Sonic Embassy. Now streaming everywhere you listen.
Access quick links to your favorite places to listen now at solo.to/Sonic Embassy.
Underrated.
Our underrated pick is a band that our two guests apparently have been dying to talk about for ages. So Sam, Martin, who are we talking about and why?
We are moving on to the criminally underrated New York band They Might Be Giants, as composed by John Flansburgh and John Linnell, who've been releasing albums from sort of 1986 to the present day. with all sorts of topics, all sorts of audiences, all sorts of they're podcasters as well. They're Renaissance men. We've not really talked very much about They Might Be Giants in the past, but it has always been the joke that this would be the band that song by song, when it's finished with Tom Waits, would move on to.
Except for they've got, what did you say, 900 songs?
According to the website I found, there's 918 songs, so we're not doing that.
We'd have to do a daily podcast.
Or just kill ourselves, either way,
Yeah, but possibly both.
But they're an incredible band. I think that they have so much inventiveness, they have so much of the textural variety that I think we have both enjoyed in Tom Waits, but also in music in general, over the last, sort of 7 or 8 years of talking about it. So it was a real excitement to get to talk about the Johns.
Yeah, and for me, the thing is just like that. To me, they're part of the same tradition, right? Like, I think Talking Heads are regarded as these avant-garde geniuses. And if you ask people about They Might Be Giants, they'll probably say, oh, they did like Bird Hair's in Your Soul and the Malcolm in the Middle theme and some kids' albums, and they're a silly novelty band. And I disagree. They're both downtown or New York bands. It's just They Might Be Giants saying like they're having fun and that you're in on the joke. And so people are a little bit less likely to put them on a pedestal. But to me, they're part of the same scene. They're just about 7 or 8 years later.
Even less, actually. Talking Heads' first album is 1977, but They Might Be Giants started performing in 1981, so it's only a handful of years, really.
Yeah, it's a few years later, yeah.
Wow, yeah, and they're still going strong from what I saw. So yeah, Fran, I think you know more than me, so what's your impression?
Being about 9 years old and hearing the song on the radio and going, Mum, what the hell is this? It's brilliant. It's got a sound of traffic in the background.
Oh yeah, yeah, they do.
I bought it on vinyl from Woolworths, like everyone had to do back in 1990. I still have it somewhere. And then I completely forgot about the band existed for a decade. And then I met Granyard at university, and he played the best of in the car. I thought, hang on, is that band from 10 years ago? And then I bought a best of, and then I fell in love with They Might Be Giants all over again. But I was sad to see that most of the songs I knew were not on your playlist.
We'd be curious to hear what your... Well, maybe at the end you can tell us what your playlist will be.
And yeah, then I bought the documentary. Is it the...
Gigantic is that one, yeah.
Yeah, because the joke is that Fran always watches the documentary if it's available. And I was like, have you seen Fran? There's a documentary. He's like, got it on DVD, mate. Gonna watch it. And I was like, I buy down.
The sad thing is, I have it on DVD. I watched on YouTube because I'm that lazy. And then I again fell in love again with them today because it's been 15 or 20 years since I last listened to They Might Be Giants, because in the UK we don't get to hear them at all on the radio. Most people in the UK, like I said, will know the 2 songs, and that basically is it. And yeah, the fans seem to be obsessed. I remember watching a girl crying after meeting the Johns.
That's incredible.
It's like, what? Like, it's not Bros, but it's not.
I think I would cry if I met the Johns. I'd be overwhelmed. Oh my God. I mean, I'd probably cry if I met David Byrne as well. But
is this a band that you know at all, Babs, or is this all just whistling in the dark?
Let me tell you. So not only... I'm coming in here as the ignoramus really waiting to be educated, because I knew Birdhouse in Your Soul and I got confused, and I thought that was also Boss of Me from the Malcolm in the Middle, and I was like, oh no. It's because obviously with Boss of Me you only ever listen to a snippet, and it just kind of meshed in my mind. And I think because... We'll get onto Birdhouse in Your Soul, but Boss of Me, because it's a bit like pop punky and it has a sort of hold steady synthy piano and some horns, I was like, it's not ready for me. But I was never, I didn't. There are bands that we've had where I'm like, oh sweet Jesus, I'm not looking forward to this. This wasn't one of them, because I guess it's kind of,
off to a good start.
It's a great start. It's wonky of rock for me, and that's not a genre that I like or dislike, but it's one that it takes. I have to force myself a little bit more. And I think, the second that I saw that there were 23 studio albums, I thought like, wow, okay, how the hell are these guys going to narrow this down to 5 songs? So yeah, how did you find that process? What was your reasoning? Obviously there's one of the songs on here that's one of their biggest songs. How did you pick the others?
there were certain things that I was really keen to hit. One of the things that They Might Be Giants have done since sort of the mid-2000s is create a stream of music which is for kids. And I feel like that also ties in with some of one of the things that also dismisses They Might Be Giants is the fact that they have a handful of songs which are very fact-based, stories about people from real life, stories about elements of science, and so I wanted to include something from their kids' oeuvre, something from their sort of fact-based things, and Birdhouse in Your Soul because it's brilliant. And I feel like the other things were about negotiating back and forth, and I think Martin and I mostly have a fairly similar taste in those things.
We ended up with a surprisingly close list of tracks. And I let Sam guide me a little bit more on the kids' music because I'm barren and Sam isn't. So he's
a whole child, one whole child.
Not half. Excellent. Yeah, and I mean, there's a little bit of cheating with one of the songs, which we will get into. But yeah.
Wow. Is it cheating?
Wow, that's fantastic. The amount of notes I had to take, and then I thought, is there any point in taking this many notes? But anyway, we can get into it. So yeah, what is the first song on the list?
Well, this is my suggestion, I think, Sam. It's a track called Rhythm Section Wanted Ad, which is from their first album. It's like the last track on their first album. I think it's a fun song, but I also think it's like a few of their songs. It's kind of a commentary on the music industry and their place in it. So there were these wonderful lyrics that, some of which were apparently things that were said to them by, managers trying to, work with them or people they met. Where, it's like, do you sing like Olive Oil on purpose? You guys must be into the Eurythmics, because they're this weird two-piece with the guy's got a bit of a weird voice. We haven't had much John Flansburgh on this selection, but he has a very deep voice. And John Linnell's got this quite nasal voice, a little bit like John Donnell from the Mountain Goats, I would say. But it's sort of, like Rhythm Section Wanted Ad is like a statement for what they are. They were a two-piece with a drum machine. And so people would look at them and be like, well, you're not a real rock band because you haven't got a bass player and a drummer. So I think immediately they're kind of like, even in 1986, they were aware that they had a bit of a, I don't know if outsider status is the quite way to put it, but people weren't quite taking them seriously because of the setup, and they were asking if they were into the Eurythmics because they were a two-piece. So I think it's really funny the way they're commenting on, like, they can see how people are sort of dissing them, and they've turned it into a song. And I think that's really nice, and it's a bit of a bop. I like it.
Sam?
I really like this song. This was not one that stood out for me. This is from their first album, like Martin said. And it's not one that stood out for me, but I've listened to these early albums so many times that it's lodged in my body and my brain, which makes me slightly nervous, like pitching for it to a certain extent, where I go, oh yeah, you just need to have listened to this endlessly since 1992, and then you'll really like it.
Yeah,
guys.
listen to it 1,500 times, Babs. You really get into it.
Okay, so when this came on, my initial thoughts were, holy fuck, that's a lot going on and a lot of instruments.
Yeah.
Right? And it wasn't at all what I expected, so I think this was a great first pick. And I really enjoyed, the drum machine and the whiny, aggressive delivery. It worked. I didn't think it would, but it took me quite a few listens to figure out whether I liked it. It was an assault on the senses, and I had to kind of take a step back. I don't really like the verses, but the second he says, as if you're in some kind of rhythm section or ad, it just, it goes mad. I love it. There's a psychobilly accordion going on. So I didn't save it to my library, but I very much enjoyed it. So thank you, Sam. It's a good start.
There's that weird element in the middle as well, like that middle section where it feels like they just get bored and go, oh, let's just play a bit of Powerhouse instead.
Powerhouse.
That seems to be a theme, at least on the songs that you've provided today.
Yeah, I described it as a polka walkout, but unexpected for most bands, but it feels right for They Might Be Giants.
There's just so much energy in this band, and very much like my critique of Talking Heads, which I do apologise your listeners will have gone through already, feels like it works for, like I've imagined it very clearly in contrast. It feels like there's so many ideas and there's so much energy and so much like enthusiasm for not just the idea in this song, but maybe how can we fit in 2 or 3 more ideas at the same time, that I feel like there's so much joy in this, and they are still talking about themselves. There is that self-referentiality. There is still that even on the first album, this idea of we're going to embrace critiques of ourselves. We're going to embrace some of the things that people would dismiss us and go with it rather than projecting an affectation. It's just like you say, let's throw as much into this song as possible and see what people think. And I delight in it.
When I say with the best of, I had no idea from what period the songs I liked, and I loved Don't Let Start.
Yeah, that's a great tune
as well.
Yeah.
And then this, I think, this follows on from that. I like this style of They Might Be Giants. And I mean, you basically mentioned everything I was going to say about that. But like, you know how you said that like they had no rhythm section. It was interesting watching that documentary that when they were kind of forced to get an actual band, there are some fans were picketing.
They boycotted,
like Dylan going electric. Like They Might Be Giants have a drummer. Like how good are they? Because I think like at some points in the 80s, they had a big stick for percussion.
For Lie Still Little Bottle.
People clapped.
The stick.
But like, I wonder if has that faded away now they've got a full band.
It sounds like a band someone's made up, to be honest, the more you talk about them.
I mean, going on tour with that stick, that's hard.
I guess that's in a Caroline van. I think that this is something we'll come back to, but I think that the term novelty band is something that can be easily used to dismiss. But I think they are a novelty band because I think they are interested in new ideas. There is the novel, there is the surprising. And I think that having a giant stick or having a drum machine or having suddenly going into, mechanistic music that everyone recognises from Looney Tunes or Ren and Stimpy cartoons, there is a sense of going surprise and engagement and novelty. And that's not just forget about them. There's value in that. There's value in extra ideas.
Agreed. So we go on to the big hit?
Yeah.
There was no way that this playlist could not include... my favourite song in the world is Superstition. Didn't know that. And I've talked for nearly a decade about Tom Waits with Martin, but They Might Be Giants is the band I most love, and Flood is their best album, and Birdhouse in Your Soul is the best song on Flood. So it's a pretty close tie with Superstition, is what I'm saying. This is a song that is, in many ways, very direct and very comprehensible. It's a song as sung by a nightlight to presumably a kid who it keeps safe and who it gives confidence to, and the nightlight imagines the things that it does for its how it relates to its friendship with the kid. It talks about its longevity. It talks about its relationship to its ancestors, how it relates to what a lighthouse does and how it could never do a job that big, but it is important to have a little blue canary in the outlet by the light switch. And I think it is so many things at the same time. It is a really catchy tune. It's obviously got an awful lot of radio play. I think it's a delightful, straightforward piece of not kids storytelling, but like all ages storytelling. We've all had, if not a literal nightlight, we've all had that sense of anthropomorphizing the things in our childhood homes, the things that we grew up with, and making mythic and gigantic and human the objects that we saw every day as kids. And it's a delightful piece. It's got a great music video. It's a delightful piece of writing. I think it's kind of a perfect song. No pressure, guys. Martin, how do you feel about it?
I'm going to see that and raise you.
Go for it.
This is my favourite song.
Awesome.
This is my favourite song in the world. I listened to this on the radio. I taped it from the Philip Schofield Radio 1 show, and I played that tape until it broke, and when it broke, I cried. It is brilliant. I love it. I don't know whether it's even that I connect with the lyrics in the way that Sam's talking about. I think musically it's perfect. When that like snare drum hits and it drops, I'm just like, yes, we're off to the fucking races. Like, let's do this. And there's, I mean, you can talk about it musically. It's quite complicated. There's a lot of chord changes. Like the chorus, like it doesn't repeat on like a 4-bar thing. It's like a 6-bar repeat. So it has this constant sense of forward momentum. You never feel like you've got to the end and like you're just waiting for the next thing to happen. There's a constant sense of movement. So it's really good writing. And the bit at the end where there's the rounds where you've got the chorus and then the sort of like final line of the chorus overlapping, which it hasn't done before, is so satisfying. It just feels so great. It's a perfect song and my favourite song, and therefore the best song in the world.
Fran?
I rest my case.
Double no pressure.
Ooh, no, never felt the pressure like this before. So let's go to the person who
Twist or
knows more.
stick, Fran.
Fran.
Well, I mean, I've already declared that I purchased it as a 9-year-old.
Yeah,
So.
right.
Bloody
Sensible
hell.
9-year-old.
Ian Lee is a big fan of his band.
Ah.
And every time I see them live, he can sing this a cappella, word for word. That's how much he liked this. But I remember, like, as a 9-year-old, I never heard the phrase "not to put a too fine a point on it." That's that, and that very much is the band. They had to have phrases in it I never heard or
But then
expected.
the follow-up, say, not to put too fine a point on it, say, I'm the only bee in your bonnet. It's such a sweet lyric.
Tortuous,
it's like a
but
Cole Porter
totally
lyric.
coherent as well.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, when he first did the demo, it was like a minute long, and they're famous for having short songs, and they thought that was enough. And then, like, the producers are going, "No, like, this is like a stone cold classic.
Right.
You've got to make this into a full song," which is why they then added like those traffic sound and the producers basically. But the best bit to me is like the three harmonies at the end. And when you try and sing along, I always change who I follow.
Yeah.
Which John I sing on the way out, and I think it's a bit like it's the end of the world as you know it. I think a lot of people think they know the lyrics and then start trying to sing along, and then
it's a really weird emphasis. Like it's like was it keep the nightlight on inside the bird house in your soul, which is not where the emphasis. And I had a massive argument with my now wife, because we were singing the song in a wedding band, and she was singing "Put the nightlight on in the birdhouse in your soul." That's not where the emphasis falls in my favourite song. And we almost broke up. Well, luckily it wasn't our wedding, but we would have divorced over it.
Did you know that the intro on purpose is mastered
Yeah.
lower?
Yeah,
than
really
the
quiet.
snare
What
drum?
a brilliant move, right? To include a lift, not only like musically, but also volume-wise, so that anyone who starts immediately gets about 15 seconds in, a little punch the air moment built into the structure of the song.
Bam, bam. Yeah.
Babs,
I really
you've
don't
listened to all of this. Come on.
So what I will say is, I guess what I was worried about with They Won't Be Giants, as other bands that we've discussed, is they are twee, and that is not generally my thing. We've discussed Hold Steady, we've discussed Grandaddy. This isn't a million miles away. However, it works. It absolutely works. And I think part of it, is the scansion, the lyrics, as you say, not to put too fine a point on it, like not just the tease, but it's the fact that he's not forcing you. He's like, not to put, he's not saying, as Martin said, immediately go to Bee in Your Bonnet. Just the imagery is amazing. And I didn't look at the lyrics too closely. I didn't know it was about a nightlight. I just thought, okay, this is a sweet song. And even for hardened cynics like me who want to listen to loud rocky music, I'm like, yeah, bring on the birdhouse in my soul. Come on, guys. Yeah. So yes, happy to join the fan club, even, as, let's say, what is it, like a non-executive member, perhaps, not as a fully paid up member.
We're gonna do a massive shift to another song.
So this is where we had some back and forth emails and considerations on whether this was cheating or not. So
definitely cheating.
Why have you done this to us? No, why have you picked this?
In the 1992 release Apollo 18, They Might Be Giants included a track which is now found on most streaming services as Fingertips Combined. Fingertips is 21 short songs which range from 4 seconds to about 60 seconds, and the idea was that these would appear as tracks 17 to 37 on a CD, and you could put your CD in the CD player, hit shuffle, and every now and again, or almost, statistically, between most songs, you would get a little fragment of another song, which was sort of designed to sound a little bit like an advert for another song, like you get on a compilation CD, where you just get a shard, in the phrasing of the Johns, a shard of the chorus to tempt you into listening to this song. But these songs don't exist, and so the idea was that it would create this multifarious, varied experience of listening to Apollo 18. However, on the pressing in Japan and in Europe, they got it wrong, and so tracks 17 through 37 became one track, a 4.5-minute track called Fingertips, and it didn't work, and what a disappointment. But we have taken this opportunity to pick 21 short songs as our third song. Very sorry.
I was thinking, how the hell are we going to do this? But how did you listen to and write notes about this?
I just kind of took it in. I should say, another reason for picking this is that this does kind of, for me, cement their artwork credentials. Yes. Because there's a 1980 album by a group called The Residents, who are an incredibly culty, nerdy, like art rock band. Enormous amount of credibility, not much commercial success. And on that 1980 album, the commercial album, David Byrne and Brian Eno and various other Andy Partridge feature. And it is an album composed entirely of 1-minute songs. There's something like 40 1-minute songs, one of which is called Fingertips. So to me, that's a pretty clear sign that They Might Be Giants are in this world of art rock, and you might kind of be tempted to throw that aside as a bit of a gimmick, and then you go back 10 years and a very weird arty band is doing exactly the same thing, and that's why I picked it.
There's a lot of variety in this song as well. I think it also establishes not just their art rock credentials, but also, writing a song and then going, can we get 2 or 3 other ideas in? They are prolific to the point where their own boredom is the governing feature of what goes into a song. And here they get to splurge that boredom and go, all right, 21 little fragments of choruses. Dig in, guys. Fill your boots.
First lines. I mean, let something grab a hold of my hand. That sounds like the beginning of a great
song. Tammy Wynette, yeah, really good. Sorry, guys, we've monopolised. What did you think?
No.
That's fine. I think this was the last album of Elektra, and I think that's another reason why they left, because they just didn't get it. They had no idea what their world was. And I guess this was But what is interesting, I was looking up the song meaning, and people obviously don't know it's a mistake, and they're analysing the entire song as if it's meant to be that way. And one person saying, this is about their journey
through life,
from being born
7 Ages of Man. Yeah, I read that as well.
And then someone says, each fragment represents a different band and artist who they love or hate. Really? Where am I getting these stories from? So I enjoy reading that. I mean, it's impossible to analyse this. Because it's about 10 billion songs. Yeah. I enjoyed the very first and the very last.
Everything is catching on fire, and I walked alone down darkened corridors. Yes,
there's a good one. Yeah, I really like. I'm having a heart attack. That's. I'm having. I think maybe a quick way to do this is just to be like, roughly like, what proportion of these would you like to hear as songs? Because for me, I'd say over half of them I'd be like, yeah, I'd listen to this as a song.
Is it all them singing? Because some
there's a few guest vocals.
There's female vocalists, aren't they? Yeah.
I was going to say,
there's a couple of female vocalists and a couple of male vocalists.
I took notes for each song, so my notes are. I feel like, I don't know, it's like music bingo, where I've got, Turbo Dolly Parton, haunted, high-pitched, annoyed Nick Cave, pop-punk brattiness combined with 60s melodies / punk sensibilities.
Who was the Nick Cave? Sorry,
Nick Cave was. I found a new friend. Was Nick Cave.
Underneath my pillow.
I thought that was Johnny Cash, sort of like American recordings era.
Anyway. I'll finish soon, but aren't you the guy who hit me in the eye? I put psychedelic stranglers-esque deep-voiced horror, monster mash rockabilly, and then I was like, am I losing my mind? Or not, because the way that I did it was because I was just like, I feel like this deserves this. So yeah, this is incredibly original, and I wrote like, has anyone ever done this before? You've answered that question, but I really enjoyed listening to these as individual songs and then listening to it all as one song, and you get different things out of it. And yeah, I think I want to listen to almost all of these. I think the man with the deep voice scares me. I think he's going to come and haunt my dreams. Even in I Hear the Wind Blow, which sounds like him reading like a children's book, but I'm like, if I listened to that when I was too young, I think I honestly would have had nightmares. Yeah. My personal favourite was I Don't Understand You. Because it's
I just don't understand you.
There's an electric harpsichord. There's like different melody lines, melody and a harmony going on. No, I mean, at the beginning I was like, oh my god, how the hell am I going to do this? By the end I was like, thank you guys. Actually, this was great.
I discovered the very exciting fact that the Edinburgh-based group They Might Be Gannets a few years ago created an album where they expanded all of these fragments into full songs.
That sounds cool.
And are they good? No, they're not. But I sort of, as a producer,
they might be
of completist,
but they're not giants.
No. And as a producer of completist audio content on the internet, I admire their work, but I cannot endorse it.
Oh, I should say one more thing, which is they play this live.
Yeah, they do.
And
There's
that's
some great live
amazing.
versions.
Like I saw them when I saw them. I think they do it at most gigs. They played the whole thing live, and I was just like, That's really cool.
Yeah, that must
That's a
take
lot of
so
learning.
much practice. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And can the audience sing word by word and know the changes?
I
Well,
think
if the audience
probably,
is me, I mean,
I think the one that I was most impressed by, just to finish off, The Day That Love Came to Play, because it is 8 seconds and it is in 2 parts. There's like a piano ballad, then a salsa bit. You're just like, this is number 18. How do they do this? Yeah, again, yeah. Thank you. This was great. This was great.
very sorry.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Överschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
And your next pick?
So this is the one that I wanted to include for their kids albums. They've produced 5 or 6 kids albums, some of which have very specific topics. Here come the 1, 2, 3s, here come the ABCs, here come science, and then a few which are just called like no and why.
They love saying no, don't they? Because in Rhythm Section 1 ads, someone going no, and then I saw in 2002 they love it so much they named an album after it. So
Consent's a very important issue with They Might Be Giants. They're trying to
You've got to
educate
be able
people.
to say it. It's very important for kids.
consent is
to
important.
understand.
Okay, yeah.
Very important. So 4 and 2 is the second track off their first kids album, No! Exclamation mark. And again, I like this because I think it's a really straightforward piece of storytelling. It's a story of a guy who has a date with a girl, and he goes to a clock, and the clock says 4 of 2, 4 minutes before 2, and he's meeting her at 2, and so he waits, and the clock still says 4 of 2, and he gets tired, and it gets dark, still says 4 of 2, he lies down, and then he opens his eyes, and he is awokened in a nightmarish future world with flying metal cars and gigantic bugs, but the clock still says 4 of 2, so he's still waiting for the girl. And it's based, Linnell said really clearly in a live version, this is a song about a clock that doesn't fucking work.
It's a real clock. It was a clock in Manhattan. The sad thing being that they fixed it not long after this song was written. Or maybe that's a good thing. I mean, clocks should work.
But it's like presents as a kid's song, but I think it typifies, 1, the idea that you don't have to do dumb music for kids, 2, that good kid stories or good family stories in music, in film, in TV, in literature can be something that has charm and satisfactory endings and surprise twist and novelty. There we go. But they can also be very resonant, the same as a little nightlight. We can imagine this situation, and possibly we wouldn't sleep until the end of time. But I think it delights me and charms me, and like a lot of their kids' songs, I can engage with it as an adult, as well as going, oh yeah, I can imagine that this would be a fun, semi-educational element for a kid to listen to.
I can certainly imagine me sing this in music class. And again, we've got the accordion. I mean, when I first heard it, I wasn't even aware it was from a children's album. I just thought this was another They Might Be Giants album. So it shows that, they're not changing their ideals to create this children's music. They're not dumbing down at all. I mean, yeah, it's better than the Wiggles. So
how dare you?
So I think I love the lyrics. They come through loud and clear, and it tells the whole story. But I put twee 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 too much for me. I'm afraid the pretty much the only bit of the song that I liked was the distorted Sonic Youth guitar and accordion when he says, once I awoke to a futuristic world, there were flying cars and gigantic metal bugs. I'm like, that sounds much better than this fucking clock, really. So I would rather go into that world. I'm sorry, Sam. I feel similar to what I did in Hold Steady, of like, the lyrics are good, but musically it's not so much for me.
Do their fan base separate these from the other albums?
I would say so, yeah.
I think so, yeah. You find them on Spotify under 2 categories. They Might Be Giants, which weirdly does include No and Why, but then there's also Here Come the 1, 2, 3s, Here Come the ABCs, Here Come Science under They Might Be Giants, brackets for kids. And I think they tend to gig where they do a daytime or afternoon show for kids in the day in the same venue that they're going to do their grown-up, double bubble.
That's
Why
cool.
not?
So, to the final track.
Which also is about history.
Kind of, yeah. It's the track's called The Mesopotamians. It's about a band who were also this ancient race of people, I guess.
Yeah.
So it is kind of, it's like fact-based. I don't feel like I learn about the Mesopotamians, apart from maybe their names and some of the neighbouring cities that they dislike from the song. But to me, it's like, there's this cliche, isn't it, that like every band's like second album is all about like being on tour and missing their girlfriends, and like There Might Be Giants, whatever it is, like 25th album has this song which is kind of about like how it can be a drag big in the band and like trudging around town when no one gives a toss. But they've put it through They Might Be Giants, like Mesopotamian historical lens, and it sounds like, apart from that part, it kind of sounds to me like a song the Monkees could have done. I really like it. It's like it's a.
I actually put that. I said this sounds like they're about to sing "Hey Hey We're the Monkees."
Yeah.
I had never heard it before, and I had to check what year. It's 2007, so it turns out, when a band has such a big catalogue, you kind of want them to be bad after a while to make it easier.
Really useful.
I'm hoping that they got crap after 2002, but it turns out they haven't. This was literally in my head for the past 3 hours. I can't sing the chorus because I can't pronounce half the words.
Yeah,
or half the cities I've never heard before.
Some can do it. I can't. Some is all the names.
Shadrach, Hammurabi, Ashurbanipal, and Gilgamesh.
There we go.
Beautiful.
And they're all real people. I mean, Gilgamesh is a
God, right?
He's possibly a Mesopotamian king from circa like 2000 BC, but he's a figure from Mesopotamian folklore. And the other characters, Ashurbanipal created the library, which is probably responsible for retaining the epic of Gilgamesh. Hammurabi, is one of the pioneers of systems of law and established the idea of codified justice system for the punishment of lawbreakers. Sargon was like the first single person to rule an empire. They're significant figures, not as significant as the Monkees, obviously, but there is this sense that, like, by smashing together genuine historical fact, again, there's this element that you can burrow down to and either go, this was what, this is a bit like Hard Day's Night with the Beatles and jumping through the air. And it's also, and now I've learned how to pronounce Ashurbanipal.
But it's that juxtaposition I think is interesting. Like, I mean, I think it's nice, like a song like The Sun is a Massive Incandescent Gas, which explains what the sun is. Like, that's a cool song. But I like the fact that it's not just an explainer.
Yes.
It's actually an interestingly artistic collision of like some weird historical characters and then a completely different narrative.
And also catchy as well. Like, it's not just... Yeah.
There's a really great track on their 2011 album called You Probably Get That a Lot, which sounds on its surface like a love song, and then you dig into it and you realise the subject of the love song is a headless statue that's walking down the street. And it's just like, that's really interesting. That's like, I mean, you might just hear that and just think that's a really nerdy choice. But then it works.
It can be both. It can be both,
yeah.
Apparently, reading on YouTube comments, this is big in middle school in America. And I will say this is my second favourite song on the playlist.
Okay.
Mm.
Did this crash through your melodic guitar shields at all?
So I truly hated the chorus. Okay, I really disliked it. If I was a producer, I would come in and splice the song up completely differently, because I really love the beginning. I was like, one guitar and drums. What? That's a simple song. Okay. I was enjoying it. The chorus comes in and I was like, oh Jesus. Then it goes back to guitars and drums. Okay, I'm like, yeah, okay, got it. So I like the verses. I like the bridge with the bass, and I like the harmonies outside of the chorus. But I really enjoyed the fact that it was about Mesopotamia. We probably don't all know Mesopotamia by B-52s. Great song, but doesn't give you as much. Absolutely great song. I do recommend it. Great harmonies there that don't annoy me as much. But it really reminded me of. So I had COVID last month, and I don't know why, but I got obsessed with Kings of the Wild Frontier by Adam and the Ants. And the last song on that is called The Human Beings. And it's just him reciting, I'm guessing, like Native American chiefs. So it's him going, Blackfoot, Pawnee, Che, and Crow, Apache, Arapaho. And I got that vibe as well of like, this is a fun way to learn about history. And I thought, okay, yeah, it's not horrible history's mainstream accessibility, but it is something.
Don't you speak badly about horrible history. I will fight you. Okay, good. I'll fight to the death
through the screen. No. I'm just reading Greg Jenner's book about Dead Famous. So yeah, no, I'm big fan. Sometimes songs just don't come together in the way that I would like them. I really, it's sure. Funny, Fran, that you say it was stuck in your head. Like, like that's a good thing, because for me, I was just like, no, guys, what are you doing? Like, go back to the guitar and the drums. But
how many times did you listen to it?
3 times. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
I think that's enough.
Yeah, so do I.
I mean, I think that is the kind of like, I do think they sound, lyrics notwithstanding, they sound more like a kind of regular rock band, like post 2000.
That's fair.
And maybe that doesn't play to their strengths. They arguably are better like rock bands. I do really like this track, and I do like the music they make in this vein. But when they're doing something where you just like, no one else could have done this, or no one else would have chosen to do this, that feels a little more of an obvious like, yeah, that kind of cements them in the canon of art rock history. But,
the novelty, Martin, the novelty that they bring.
Yeah. I think what I wanted to say, I wanted to kind of emphasize before, I think Fran brought it up and other people, of like, yeah, it really annoys me, and it feels like more of an American thing, I guess, than a British thing of, yeah, humor being seen as lesser than, it just in throughout culture, not just music, how the fact that there isn't, best comedy at the Oscars or whatever it is, and it's like humor is much easier to write a song being like, I am so sad, look at how sad I am, to make people laugh, to write songs with the titles of Why Is That Thing Blue, or whatever it was called, from
What's That Blue Thing?
What's That Blue Thing? So apologies, and Aren't You the Guy Who Hit Me in the Eye, like that, much more difficult than being like, I'm slitting my wrists tonight. So but
I think there's a critical split between like it's a comedy song or it's a real song, and that real song shouldn't have humor. Whereas even to classic example I always think of is like Leonard Cohen. Like he was whatever you think of his music, he used a lot of humor in his writing, and I think it's quite funny. And Dylan, again, I mean, whether or not you think he's overrated, he's a big artist, and he used humor in his music to express certain things about the absurdity of society. So that division is like very wrong-headed to me, to be like, well, if you use humor, you're a joke band, and if you don't, then you're a proper band. And it's just like, not every song has to have a punchline in it. If it's funny, it can be humorous and still be making a point.
There are categories of these things. Satire and wit are appreciated, but things that make you lol are easy to dismiss.
I have a feeling, Sam and Martin, I know what you're going to say here, but yeah, any final thoughts on They Might Be Giants being underrated?
Just mainly that I think that there's it's the antithesis of what I said about Talking Heads. I think there is immense innovation. I think Martin's absolutely right. They fall into that New York art experimental thing, but they don't have the pretension, they don't have the condescension. They have a lot of love and enthusiasm for the music they write, for the topics they engage with, for the density of information they put in their music. I think they are massively underrated because people go, yeah, they wrote a couple of songs in the early 90s. What? Malcolm in the Middle. What else? Oh, it's interesting. I wonder where they went.
I think largely what Sam said. I think we need a bit more fun in our canon, right? And it's not that they have to be comedy. But the fact that they're having fun, I think a lot of the things that seem humorous about them is just that they sort of don't filter that much, and that is like in a way more creative than being like, oh, we can't do a song that sings about Mesopotamians. That's a silly idea. People won't take us seriously. They don't care about that, and I think they take their music seriously, but they that doesn't stop them from just fucking about, and that for me is the sort of spirit of creativity in music.
I feel like. I hate keep comparing them to Sparks, but Sparks recently had a documentary to show everyone the world of Sparks. I feel like They Might Be Giant need someone to get behind them to show what else they've done over the past 30, 40 years. So to me, definitely underrated. They've got too many good, decent songs. Again, I enjoy watching that documentary. They're very charismatic, likable guys. They can play so many different styles of music, and they can write about bloody germs and space to Istanbul. You can't see the Beatles doing that, so definitely underrated.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you all, guys. I think they are underrated. I think Fingertips was what swung it for me. I mean, I don't think I've ever switched 180 so much of like, oh god, I'm gonna have to write all these bloody songs and how long they last.
Pages of notes.
I could refer to them, and I was like, this is genius. And yeah, I mean, I hope they've made some money making jingles. Is all I can say. No, I think even though I think precisely because they are not 100% my kind of music. There's so many elements which normally don't chime with me, like a cheerful piano. They do that on some songs, and I like it. And you absolutely cannot deny the variety, the range. And I think, as Martin said, like the braveness, the creative braveness of just absolutely bloody going for it. So yeah, I think I remain, as Fran would be, overwhelmed by the choice of songs, and maybe I'd have to get a personal music curator to make me like a 10-track of They Might Be Giants. Yeah, Sam, if you, I'm sure you're not a busy man. If you want to make me one of those.
This, no, nothing.
If you come back with fingerprints part 2, I'm going to kill you. But
sure.
I was very pleasantly surprised and would like to hear more of the kind of songs I liked. So yeah,
hooray,
fantastic.
Yeah.
So as we reach the end, Sam, Martin, what would you like to plug?
Well, we about 7 or 8 years ago, me and Martin started a terrible idea called Song by Song. For the last near decade, we have been talking about the music of Tom Waits, the gravelly voiced singer you may know or you may not. Underrated, overrated. We still haven't pinned that down ourselves. But we release episodes weekly. You can find that in your podcatcher by searching for Song by Song Podcast or by visiting songbysongpodcast.com. I think probably when this comes out, we'll probably be about to be going into a little mini film season as well. So you can see Tom Waits acting, Tom Waits singing, two guys talking about all the Tom Waits.
Which is a weird about 2004. So like that's most of his albums at this point, not all of them, not the obviously 25th. So if there's like one you're like, I've been meaning to get into Tom Waits, I'd like to listen to like Small Change. Like, why not listen along with us?
Yeah.
Very good. How have you projected when you're going to finish recording the podcast? How long it's going to take you still?
In heaven. Heaven is a place where we have stopped talking about Tom Waits. It's that internal.
Is it next summer?
I think that's, if all goes to plan, we should have it wrapped by the end of 2023, plus or minus film episodes. We're nearly there.
A decade of Tom Waits, that is dedication. Absolutely.
If he does release like an amazing album,
shut up, friend.
Would you go
shut up, friend?
One last job. Just when we think we're getting out, it pulls us back in.
God damn it. Martin, anything else you'd like to plug?
I make a podcast called Neutrino Watch, which is a daily generative semi-fictional podcast. So if you go onto the feed and listen to one of the episodes and then you like stream the same episode the next day, it'll be a little bit different. So there's all kinds of stuff on there. There's like an astronomy show. There is a song a day show where I've written a song and it changes every day. The lyrics change, the instruments change. I'm about to start a music criticism show about an in-world character called Gus Homs, where we talk about a Gus Homs track every day, and then there's like a fresh piece of music that's generated that we're commenting on.
Martin.
Well, it's all done with computers, so I don't actually have to make it every day. I just have to spend 6 months building the code to make it every day. But check that out. Look for Neutrino Watch on your podcatcher of choice, or go to neutrino.watch.
Okay, excellent. And of course, I'll plug the Song by Song episodes that we guested on.
Yes.
You should check those out.
If you're going to start, of course you've got to start there. If you enjoyed our chat about water today, you're going to really enjoy it on Song by Song. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Fantastic month, and see you next time, Fran.
Thank you, guys, and good night, goodbye, till next time.
So we hope you enjoyed this episode with 4 different people. Shout out to Fran, who had fun editing this one. And a shout out also to my friend George, who was absolutely disgusted when I told him that Talking Heads were going to be picked as overrated. So I hope, George, that the conversation has been nuanced enough for you. I also have to say that I had to really not be a fangirl, because I'm a huge fan of Answer Me This, which Martin is on. And I hope I kept my shit together. If you think I didn't keep my shit together, you can get in touch. On Instagram, it's at @overunderatedmusicpod. On Twitter, it's at @OUmusicpod. Or you can email me to tell me how little I have my shit together on overunderatedmusicpod@gmail.com.